fun.
Okay, good. Hey, welcome everyone. I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting of February 15th, 2023. Let me just get my agenda up in front of me here. Here we go. So first thing on our agenda is to approve today's agenda. Are there any changes or deletions that anyone has to make? Okay, seeing none, we'll move ahead. Next item on the agenda is superintendent's update. We'll pass it on to Superintendent McKinney.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is an update from the high school on their program of studies. I'll turn things over to Principal Cahill and her high school team that are here to present.
Thank you, Dr. McKinney. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. McKinney said, first item on the agenda is the program of studies presentation for the school year 23-24. Can't believe we're talking about that. We had shared with school committee members the changes that we do have to the program of studies. And with me this evening, I have Barb Meyer, Director of School Counseling, Brian Seelig, the Math Director, and H. Hardy, Head of the English Department. And Brian and H will go over the changes that we have for the Math, English, and Social Studies Department, including some additions of some new courses. We have one small change in the Science Department that I'm happy to speak about if there's any questions to that, and answer any other questions that you have in regards to the general process of the program of studies. So I'd like to start with the changes in courses, and I'm going to ask Brian Seelig to go first with math, if that's okay with everyone. Brian?
Thanks, Karen. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to share my screen with the visual, or I think maybe for the benefit of the committee members and the community. I hope it's going to work. Is that working? Awesome. Okay.
It is.
The only thing that may not work as ideally as I'd like is the size sort of the visual. So I'll maybe have to do a little bit of scrolling here as I highlight some of the specific areas to draw your attention to. So there are some significant proposed changes for the math program at Milton High School for next year. And I'm going to talk about them sort of in different groups. I want to first draw your attention to proposed changes for junior year, only some of which are visible to you at the moment. And I'll adjust the screen as I go along. Really the opportunity for high schools across the country to offer an AP pre-calculus course for the first time in fall of 2023 has gotten us thinking, leading up to today's meeting, very carefully about whether it was something that would fit well into our program or not. And after a lot of discussion within our department and with the teachers at Milton High School, we felt strongly that this was an opportunity that we wanted to bring to our students at MHS as soon as we could, which is this coming fall. The sort of domino effect of building this course into our program of studies is that it means no longer having integrated math courses in junior year the way that we currently do and have for several years since before I came to work in the district. As you can see, at least from the top of this document, we have and will plan to continue to have integrated Math 1 and integrated Math 2 courses in 9th and 10th grade, both at the honors and college prep level. There's no change as far as that is concerned. But in order to accommodate AP pre-calculus, which we feel is a valuable opportunity for our students, not only as the highest available, most rigorous math course available to juniors, but also as a possible option for seniors. And I'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. And so that course is actually, while new, very similar in scope and sequence to what has been our previous most advanced junior level course called Course 3 Accelerated Honors. So AP Pre-Calculus would be replacing that. We feel it's important to offer a non-AP honors level version of pre-calculus for juniors as well as select seniors as well. And that has the effect, for those who are familiar with our existing program, of essentially replacing our Course 3 honors. And there, as a result, we also have the opportunity, and I think this is a improvement for our program for a number of reasons that I'll try my best to articulate clearly. By removing Course 3 and integrated courses in general from our program in junior year and replacing them not only with AP and honors calculus, but also with Algebra 2 at both the honors and college prep level, we are, I think, better positioned to meet the varying needs of our students at the end of sophomore year and build more pathways to different sequences of courses in both junior and senior year. As it currently stands, students don't have the opportunity to take a pre-calculus or comparable course of study in senior year because whichever level of Course 3 they enroll in as juniors, that's their sort of one shot at that content. By introducing Algebra 2 into junior year along with pre-calculus, we're aiming to create more opportunities for students in terms of what their options look like, not just in junior year, but where that then, what that then prepares them for in senior year. So everything that you see listed here under 11th grade, and I've had to scroll down a little bit to make it a little bit more visible. Let me see if I change my size a little bit. Does that make the graphic too small for you still to be able to see? It does. Okay, fair enough. I apologize. I'll go back to full and just, you'll have to bear with me as I scroll back and forth a little bit. So let me stay at the top of the document for a moment and let's talk about what the implications of this are for our highest achieving, most skilled students in math. As it stands right now, students are already taking integrated math 1 in freshman year at the honors level, integrated math 2 in sophomore year at the honors level. And then again, forgive me for being redundant, but the proposed changes here would allow students coming from at the end of 10th grade, the honors level integrated math 2 to be recommended for either AP or honors pre-calculus in 11th grade, or for students that need a little bit longer to and a little bit more exposure. That's a pretty significant jump to go from an integrated math 2 honors to an AP or honors pre-calculus. We're introducing this Algebra 2 honors course, not only for students coming out of honors in 10th grade, but also for the strong students in college prep in 10th grade. Students taking AP pre-calculus next year as juniors, if that proposed change is accepted, will still, as they have been, go on to take AP pre-calculus at either BC, which is the faster paced, deeper, more advanced level of AP Calculus, or AP Calculus AB. And that's why that those two courses in the same box here remain in green, because there's no changes there. The pre-calculus honors is being proposed to operate in the same way Honor Statistics has this year, which is in partnership with Quincy College, and carry the potential opportunity for students enrolled in it to earn college credit upon successfully completing that course with a grade of C or higher. And from there, you see, again, not much different than what we currently have in place in terms of our junior year honors integrated math 3, going on predominantly to calculus, either at the AP or honors level. The reason calculus honors is coded in yellow is because, just as we're hoping to offer the opportunity for dual enrollment credit for students who successfully complete the honors version of pre-calculus, we would like to offer the same for the students who next year successfully complete our honors calculus course with a grade of C or higher. Both courses, along with the statistics that I referenced a moment ago, all address content that is considered to be college level. All three have AP versions where students are putting themselves in good position to earn college credit by performing well on the AP exam. We would like to cast the net even wider and allow opportunities for students who complete the non-AP or honors version of those two courses, along with statistics, which has been in place already this year since the beginning, to have opportunity to earn college credit upon completion. This is maybe a good time to pause and see if you have any questions before I shift the screen down a little bit and talk about what the implications now would be for students who leave 10th grade coming out of our college prep level of integrated math 2.
Great, I see a couple hands raised. Member White, want to go first?
Sure. Brian, could you just talk about what integrated math is? Because I remember back, I'm thinking about geometry and, years ago when we did that kind of math, but can you just tell me what is taught in integrated math in the 9th and 10th grades?
Yes, thank you for raising that question, Member White. So most high schools still go by traditional high school math coursework starting in 9th grade, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus. We want to preserve the integrated math model for 9th and 10th grade for a few reasons that I'll talk about in just a moment. But first, let me explain what that actually entails. So rather than to teach all Algebra 1 content in one year and all geometry content in another, and it usually for high schools that have that model tend to do it in the reverse of what I just described. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it that way. Some high schools do Algebra 1 and then geometry. Some start with geometry and then do Algebra 1. But what we do with our integrated math 1 and 2 courses is that we basically take all of the geometry content and Algebra 1 content from those traditional courses, and we divvy them each up into our 9th and 10th grade integrated math 1 and 2 courses as they exist. So students in both 9th and 10th grade spend about half of their year learning algebra content and the other half of their year learning geometry content. The reason that we feel that that is the best model and one that we should preserve in those first 2 years of high school is, for one, there's a lot of benefit that students reap from getting exposure to varying mathematical concepts over the course of a single year. If you keep Algebra 1 to 1 year, students who have more difficulty in algebra spend the entire year struggling. Whereas this model allows students who are stronger in one of those two big areas than the other to have some success and spend more of their focus area in building up the areas for growth where they're not as proficient. It's also true that basically all of the math prior to 9th grade is integrated. All of the standards starting in kindergarten up through 8th grade have this sort of blended exposure to algebraic concepts, geometry concepts, and statistics concepts starting in middle school. So we feel like there's a smoother transition coming from 8th to 9th grade if we preserve an integrated approach. I think I've exhausted my rationale for why we want to keep the integrated math 1 and 2. The non-negotiable is that we have students at the end of sophomore year who have had instruction on all of the material that will be covered on the 10th grade, the spring 10th grade math MCAS, and we're assured of that by our current model. DESE doesn't prescribe the way that it does in the younger grades what has to be taught at each specific grade level. It just states that the content in an Algebra 1 or a geometry course will be covered on MCAS. How you get there is up to the local decision making and programmatic decision. The reason we feel comfortable, though, moving away from the integrated model starting next year in junior year is because students start to have a better sense of what their strengths are, what their interests are. And so it's appropriate to specialize a little bit more after sophomore year. Once MCAS is in the rear view, we sort of look at our 11th and 12th grade program while still offering a lot of flexibility as having some connection that students who are ready to and interested in taking pre-calculus in 11th grade are being prepared to take calculus in 12th grade. Students who are taking in this proposed changes Algebra 2 in 11th grade are well positioned to go on and take statistics or pre-calculus in 12th grade. But I also, and this is getting a little bit into the weeds, the reality is that the sort of even blend of algebra and geometry that exists in our 9th and 10th grade integrated math courses is no longer as viable in an integrated Math 3. The geometry standards have basically been exhausted by the end of sophomore year. And so you're really already kind of not as true to the integrated model as is the case in 9th and 10th grade. So I hope, Member White, that my answer wasn't too long-winded. I hope that I helped clarify what it even means to have an integrated Math 1 course in 9th grade and an integrated Math 2 course in 10th grade. And I hope I've also provided some rationale for why it's not necessary to extend that moving forward into an integrated Math 3 in 11th grade.
Thank you, you did.
Glad to hear it.
Thank you. Member Ross Denny.
Good evening, Brian. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk the school committee through graphically what you'd shared with us about a month ago. My question is about the dual enrollment program. I'd love to hear how it's going, if you've gotten any feedback from the students, how the partnership is going with Quincy College, and in terms of planning for calculus, have we already started those negotiations with that school? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Member Ross-Denny, for bringing that up. So regrettably, we're probably still another 2 to 3 weeks from having a more robust update for the committee about how it's going. One of the things that we are grateful for in this partnership with Quincy College is that they're so accommodating of their member districts in terms of extending the deadline by which students need to apply to enroll in earn the dual enrollment credits. This year, as an example, students don't need to register and submit payment until March 31st. So I just, over the past week, have visited each of our 4 honor statistics classes. And now that we're in the case of seniors, which is most of the students taking statistics this year, in fact, with only 1 or 2 exceptions, those students are well beyond the halfway point of their school year. And obviously have, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but both term 1 and term 2 grades have closed and are in the rearview mirror. So we felt that this was really a good time to come into those classes, remind students about this opportunity, share with them some specifics about what the registration process looked like, but also give them, hopefully at this point in the year, a clearer idea of how realistic it is to meet the minimum grade requirement of C or higher that Quincy College requires in order for the credits to be awarded. And also, and we're still a little early for this, but hopefully have a better idea of what their post-secondary plans are than when we last visited in early December. And so my goal in making those visits was to provide them with as much updated information as I had, including some details about what registration entailed, but also to encourage them to consider both their status in the class as far as grades through the first half of the year are concerned, and to the extent that they have a more concrete idea of what their plans for next year are, to make sure that the school or a few schools that they're considering would accept the Quincy College credits for transfer. My follow-up to that is asking that they complete a Google form that I've shared, but I've given a deadline of the end of this week leading into February vacation to get a more specific sense about where each of our students in that course are in terms of their intent. Whether they've registered already, which at this point is a small number, whether they intend to register but haven't yet, and whether there's any more information I can provide to help them seal the deal, and whether there are, what specifically, including cost, might be a giving them pause about moving forward. So I don't have that data yet to share with the committee because it's still rolling in as we speak. To your second question, though, I've been extremely satisfied and pleased with the responsiveness that we've been getting from Quincy College, the support that we've been getting from Quincy College. My last round of visits was with a representative from the dual enrollment program at Quincy College, and she spoke directly with our students. She shared her contact information when we were debating back and forth whether to offer sort of a formal parent information session. She offered to facilitate that. And maybe that's something, especially if we are granted permission to expand this opportunity beyond this one course, that we will consider for next year. So while I don't have data to share just yet in terms of how many of our approximately 90 honor statistics students have registered for the dual enrollment credits, I do feel very confident in saying that this is a partnership that so far has been successful and worth fostering, and maybe this is yet another leap of faith that I'm asking for, but that we should continue to look for opportunities to expand upon.
Thanks for the update.
No problem. I'm about halfway through. I do have a few other additional, as I move down, proposed changes to the program. I probably spoke a little bit already about why, if you're going to offer pre-calculus in junior year, you should also offer Algebra 2. There are some students for whom that's too big of a jump, one. And two, there are some students for whom pre-calculus is not a course that makes a lot of sense for them to take in high school or ever, if they're not ultimately planning to pursue a degree or a career in a STEM-related field. They would gain much more from taking Algebra 2 in junior year and then a statistics course, whether that be AP or honors in senior year, which is for the vast majority of majors what the math requirement would be. We also, though, want to try to expand our offerings and opportunities to address our most struggling learners. The reality of the situation is that we inherit students coming up from Pearson 9th grade for whom sort of 1 year, going through the integrated Math 1 content in 1 year, while feasible and appropriate, because of how it builds upon 8th grade and other middle school content, is very realistic. We do have a very small but worthy population of student for whom that is a tall ask, and I don't mean that phrase lightly, where they would benefit more from spreading that content over 2 years instead of 1 to allow more opportunity for revisiting of prerequisite prior grade content to bolster some of those skills that have come up from the middle school lacking still. And so that's what you see at the very bottom here of this document, and they're in orange, as are the other new courses being proposed in orange, so that we can try to be proactive. And rather than have students sort of flounder in 9th grade or flounder in 10th grade and not have a sort of logical solution for them, and try to reduce the attrition in summer school, this is what we feel, again, only for a very small percentage of our students, is the best way to get them closer to proficient in the content of our 9th grade course spread out over 2 years, which then hopefully prepares them to be successful in an integrated Math 2 course in junior year instead of in sophomore year, the way most students experience that content, which is still not setting them back significantly and puts them in position to go on to our applied math course in senior year, or yet another proposed new kind of package deal of courses in junior and senior year called college algebra, spread out in a part A and in a part B. And this, the introduction of these two sort of companion courses would really only make sense if the committee approved of the proposal to offer dual enrollment credit for the college algebra B. This is probably our students that are in most, that would benefit most from dual enrollment credits through Quincy College, who are most likely potentially to actually go on and attend Quincy College or another community college and put those credits to direct use and either fulfill their math requirement through that, or at least be placed into a credit bearing first year math course in college. And so that, and I didn't answer one of your questions, Member Rosteni, I apologize for that. Yes, we've had preliminary conversations with Quincy College about each of the courses that have been proposed to you to carry dual enrollment credit. We've secured the syllabi of the Quincy College versions of these courses, and we feel confident in each case that ours aligns well in the same way statistics was approved in its alignment, so that we wouldn't actually be needing to teach anything different than we already do in our existing courses. And in the case of this college algebra course, it would really be intentionally mirrored very closely, but spread out over junior year and senior year for some of the same argument as I was making back here in the 2-year version of integrated math 1, so that there was plenty of opportunity for all students to find success and be proficient and be eligible to earn the dual enrollment credits that it carried. Oh boy. All right. I think that might be all for my portion of the presentation, but I
see one more hand up. I don't know,
Okay.
Member Verghese, if you have a question for Brian.
I just have one quick question. If you could just scroll to the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
So I just had one question, just wanted a clarification. So after you take math 1A in 9th grade and math 1B in 10th grade, do you only go to math, and when you're in math, integrated math 2 college prep in your junior year, does that cover college algebra, like the content that's taught in college algebra A in junior year as well?
There is there is a fair amount of overlap there.
Okay.
So I'm interpreting your question as, could there be an arrow drawn that would go from here to here? Mm-hmm. Yes. The reason that it's not there, well, maybe. The reason it's not there is because we treat integrated math 2 as non-negotiable. It doesn't mean students have to do it by the end of 10th grade. But if we jump from here to here, now we've lost sort of a half year worth of geometry that students are expected to learn in high school at some point. And especially if these are students that are that do not pass the MCAS in the spring of their sophomore year. Now we're talking about a very small number each year. We would want to make sure that they're getting the full exposure to the content in the integrated math 2. We also want to, well, that's my instinct in my response, but it's definitely something that we would consider. The other thought that occurs to me is you have mostly students coming from that course into college algebra A, And so I
Okay.
don't know whether students who didn't take that course and came into it, what type of dynamic that might create in terms of students' preparedness.
Okay, the only reason I asked was because integrated math 2, there is an error to algebra B. So I wasn't sure if there was, if there would be a disconnect there. Like, would they be at the same level as the kids coming in from algebra A?
By the end of these two courses, yes. Before them, probably not.
Okay, all right, great.
The
Thank you.
opportunity would still exist for students who took this course in junior year to opt in here for those dual enrollment credits in senior year.
Great, thank you.
I see one more hand up, Dr. Carroll.
Thanks. I'll be quick. I just want to thank you, Brian. I appreciate that you're thinking outside the box and creating these new courses that you see a need for, which expand opportunities for students across AP and dual enrollment, as well as trying to support the students who are arriving at high school behind and give them more direct opportunities to catch up. So I can only imagine it took a lot of work to rethink this sequencing, and thanks for being creative.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carroll, for those comments. I want to definitely be sure to acknowledge the contributions of the members of the math department at Milton High School and their support for this plan and their open-mindedness as well. And again, what looks like a really significant and dramatic amount of change in some cases is really more in the naming of the course. But that's not to diminish the fact that we're proposing introducing some courses that don't currently exist at all and are going to need some development. And that the fact that the Milton High School math department is so supportive of these changes and are willing to do that work in order to make sure we're meeting the needs of every student is a credit to them.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Brian. When Principal Cahill sent that page with all the colored boxes on it, I was thinking, boy, I really want to hear what Brian Selig has to say about this. So I was really glad to hear what you had to say, because it explained it in a way that I wasn't able to figure out on my own. So it was wonderful. Thank you so much for walking us all through that.
Not particularly concise, but I'm glad you found it to be informative. And now I guess I'm turning it over to H.
All right, and I'm going to share my screen too, if I can do that here. Give me a second. As you can see, mine is not in color because Brian is just flashier than I am in general, but we also don't have as many changes in English this year. What we have in terms of changes are all going to be at the 12th grade level. As you know, we rolled out the special interest courses to replace the general English 4 this year. And what we did was some rearranging of some things based on feedback from teachers and students and counseling. And we added 3 new courses that are going to be offered there. 2 of them are semester courses: True Crime, The Art of Storytelling, which is going to be a more nonfiction based option for seniors, and then Exploring Nature. And then a third one, which is going to be a full year option, which is British and World Literature. The other thing that we did was move African American literature, which had been a semester course, to a full year course. And that was based on both students and the teacher saying that there was so much that they wanted to cover that it was worth making for a full year. All the other ones would be semester courses, and students would pick either 2 of the semester ones or 1 of the 2 full year courses for next year. And that's the 3 changes that are being made in 12th grade. There was 1 minor change if you look down at electives. We had only a journalism 1 before. This year there were a number of students who were on the school paper who were interested in expanding their exploration of journalism. So we wanted to do a journalism 2. And before I get to the humanities AP option, I did want to touch base because there were some questions asked about the dual enrollment from Quincy. It's still in the very early stages, and I don't know what's going to happen with it, but we have been talking with the Quincy College people. If you look at the 11th grade course, The American Experience, that one might qualify as a potential dual enrollment class that could be offered. And we're actually going to be digging through the weeds to see if we can make that happen for next year when we return from the break. So late February, early March, I've got a couple meetings planned. So that is it. That's in the English program that I'm sharing right there. The only other new course that is being offered next year is the AP African American Studies. That is an interdisciplinary one. It is largely in the history department, but it's also in the English department. We're piloting it next year. We applied to pilot it with the College Board and they approved us. It's going to be taught by a history teacher and an English teacher, not both generally in the classroom at the same time, but for the aspects of it that are the English literature parts, it will be the English teacher doing the instruction and creating the assignments and working with the students. And then for the history portions, it'll be a history teacher that will be creating the assignments and working with the students. And I'm sure that there'll be some combined assignments between the two teachers in there, but those teachers have just started meeting weekly as the 234-page course description from the College Board was just released at the beginning of this month. So they're working their way through that to figure out what it is that we'll be doing with that course next year. That wraps up what I have for news. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I see Member Rosteni.
Hi, H. Thank you so much for sharing this because I appreciate the options that seniors have to explore English in another way. My traditional high school just had a 4th year of English and we didn't have this many electives. So I'm just glad that our students have this option. And I also appreciate the fact that we applied to pilot the African American history course. This is, Milton is definitely moving in the right direction. I do have a question that was raised, as I mentioned last school year, about a common set of expectations or calibration. And given the proliferation of courses that we have, and just the expectations that students have going into college for their capacity to write at a college level, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what has been done, what can be done, so that there's this common set of expectations.
Sure, I can definitely speak to that. We're working with the DataWise organization this year with a main focus on the writing, to try and do some of that calibration that you are talking about. And one of the things that we're working on with them right now is a set of some common assessments for writing that we'd be given to students in March to generate some data, which we could then go through and sift through that data and figure out what it is that we needed to do based on that. So that is the main thing that we're doing right now in terms of that. We're also looking at end of the year demonstrations of learning that are going to be consistent across all of the courses in terms of figuring out, what are the skills that the students are good at leaving 9th grade, what are they weaker at, what do we need to emphasize more going into each year. So those would be the two major efforts that we're doing in that respect.
Thank you for addressing this in such a short time. I know you're just hired this fall and you've made great progress. The simple fact that DataWise is on the case and there are these efforts to look at writing across the entire grade level gives me confidence that we're moving in the right direction. Thank you so much for your leadership on this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll.
Thanks. I definitely agree. These new courses sound really exciting. And I guess my question, I'm just curious about it more than anything else. Less so with the math, although I may have been misunderstanding the implications of adding and sort of rearranging the course sequencing that Brian presented. For these courses you're talking about, including like journalism 2, for example, each time you're adding a new elective or creating one of these new courses, essentially, is that just a teacher who's taking on an additional prep? because it doesn't seem like other classes are being removed, right? We're just adding. I'm in favor of it. I think it's awesome and exciting. I'm also a former high school English teacher, so I'm kind of wondering about how that works.
So we, within the journalism one was easy. That's just the teacher has journalism 1 and journalism 2 students in the classroom at the same time and is just doing different work with them. There was a little bit of magic that I did to open up for more senior courses. We had been offering a speech elective, but I feel very strongly that speech should not be put off to the side as something that's extra, and it needs to be emphasized much more in the regular curriculum. So we're doing that. So I took the speech elective off the table to open up those other courses, but the emphasis on speaking is going to be just as strong, if not stronger. It's just not going to be only offered now to those students who take that elective. It's going to definitely be covering every single Milton High School student in English classes all 4 years.
Great, thanks.
I see Barbara Meyer has her hand up.
You're on mute, Barbara.
Sorry, thank you. I was just going to add to H's presentation that without the typical English 4 for seniors, that left the senior English teachers to teach elective classes like this. So they've kind of just transitioned their planning over to the things they love, which has been really great for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
So we've had the math and the English and the social studies. If there's no questions about any of those, the final course that we'd like to propose is a new science elective per se, that the science department will work collaboratively with our librarian to do more of a critical research type of based of a science program. We started a course this year called Virology, which has the feedback from students has just been amazing, where they're actually doing research on diseases and viruses and presenting that back. Past few years have really opened up people's minds to be thinking like that. And so now Amy Tom, in conjunction with Jay Troy, our librarian, I'm just looking over at my computer, it's Science and Society. And basically it's a half-year elective for 10th and 11th graders, because we're thinking the 11th and 12th graders have all of these science electives, but the underclassmen, just to really engage them in the science process, this elective will be the intersectionality of science and the living experience. So really not saying to the students what they have to do the research on, but letting them find that science base that they want to do the research on, and using the tools that are available to them and us empowering them to do this type of a class where they're thinking critically, developing their own abilities to think critically and problem solve and collaborate. So that is just an elective that we're creating also in the science department this year. And again, to I think Dr. Carroll, to your question in regards to, is it taking away from, teaching and, teaching another class at this time, it's all based on enrollment. So if students are interested, we will, look at class sizes to figure out how to make it work. So again, I thank everyone right now for listening to the courses that we'd like to propose. And if there's any other questions about the program of studies, we are happy to answer them.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Dr. Miranda?
Not so much a questions, just a comment. I think this presentation, I've really enjoyed it, and it makes me want to go back to high school and take high school all over again. I can't say my high school experience was that exciting in terms of the choices of classes that I could take, but I just, it gives me, I just feel very good and very confident that definitely we're moving in the right direction, just in terms of being able to challenge our students and give them choice. And I think that's so important in terms of engagement, right? And making sure that students feel connected to what they're learning. So thank you for this presentation. I feel like I learned a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Miranda.
And I have to say, I feel the same way as you, Dr. Miranda. I mean, all I can think of is, wow, this is just really quite an amazing course offering, and bravo to the high school team for putting this together and making this available for our students. It's just wonderful to see. If we don't have any more questions or comments, like to make a motion to approve the 23-24 Milton High School Program of Studies. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, if not, we'll go to a vote. Roll call. Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member White,
Yes.
and Chair Rose Marin, yes. That's unanimous. Thank you so much, high school team. Best of luck with all of it.
Thank you so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent McKinney, I'll pass it back to you. You have some more for us?
Yes, thank you. Tonight, we have our district updates. First, as you know, the Milton High School went into a lockdown today after a phone call was received by the Milton Police Department with a potential threat. Police were immediately on scene and accompanied by other area police departments, Boston, Quincy, the State Police, Department of Homeland Security. K9 dogs were also brought in to sweep the building. After thoroughly investigating Milton High School, the Milton Police believe this was an instance of the swatting phenomenon that has been happening both locally and nationally. Since we had already been in discussions with the Milton Police regarding what to do if this swatting were to happen in Milton, we were ready to implement our emergency protocol and lockdown procedures today until any threat was ruled out by the Milton Police. We certainly value the relationship we have with the Milton Police and other local departments who are always readily available to help us in any emergency situation. I'd like to extend my thanks to the Milton High School staff and students for working together to keep the building safe. Other updates, to date, we have 118 families who have completed the preschool registration form. 112 of those 118 completed it by the January 26th deadline and were entered into the random electronic lottery on January 27th. For those awarded a spot, preschool registration is now underway. The deadline to complete the online registration is February 22nd. Waitlists are being maintained for those children who are not awarded a seat in the first round of assignments. In kindergarten, we have 310 families who have completed the kindergarten pre-registration questionnaire form. Online registration will take place March 1st through March 15th. All families who have completed the pre-registration will receive an email from our family outreach liaison, Marty O'Keefe McKenna, February 28th with all the details and steps to complete the registration. And we're excited to welcome the class of 2036. Glover and Tucker just finished their annual read aloud readathon. Combined with the two schools, they read 606,783 books in just 2 weeks. We raised a ton of money to support our Diverse Reads Book Club, which brings diverse authors to the schools to inspire young readers and writers. Also, congratulations to our elementary students who completed the Future Problem Solving Qualifying Bowl and are looking forward to those results. And looking ahead to further upcoming events, make sure you check your school's website for important events, such as the Tucker Unity Night on February 16th at the high school auditorium. A reminder, we have February break, February 20th to the 24th. There's the Milton CPAC Advisory Council meeting on February 28th. There's also a community event on February 28th. The Pierce Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will host a community event that's open to all parents and caregivers on February 28th at 6:30 p.m. in the Pierce Auditorium. This event will offer a series of short educational and skill-building workshops for parents and caregivers that will focus on promoting and supporting the academic, social, and emotional well-being of children and teens through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The workshop sessions include DEI at Pierce, facilitated by Claire Galloway Jones, our DEI director, restorative practices by Adina Schechter, our restorative justice coach, and a hate speech lesson facilitated by a Milton Public Schools student. Our next school committee is March 1st. The class of 2023 will be hosting the Harlem Wizards at the high school Copeland Fieldhouse on March 8th at 7 p.m. And coming up on March 15th, the big first grade information night 6:30 in person at the high school. That's tonight's updates. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Superintendent McKinney. Next on our agenda is Citizen Speak. We've set aside 15 minutes for anyone in the community who would like to share their thoughts with us. We have up to 3 minutes per speaker. And if there's anyone in our viewing audience who is on tonight who would like to speak, if you could please raise your hand and we will recognize you to speak. Now, I see
We have-
Colleen McCarthy. Is that?
Yes, if Milton Access could make me a co-host so I could promote her, we recognize her to speak.
Thank you.
Apologies about that.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Hi, Colleen. Yes.
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much. I think I know all of us as parents and all community members were really saddened by, what happened today in the school, regardless of whether it was, a hoax or not. I happen to live right behind the high school, or the high school is right behind me. And I think, the helicopters and everything else, obviously it's unnerving for parents. I'm just curious if there's going to be an effort to communicate to the younger children, not, the middle schoolers. I think with phones nowadays, everyone is very much aware of what's going on, and kids talk to each other on Facebook. So just wondering if there's going to be, any sort of, group sessions, whether, run by whomever, just to speak to our younger children and what the plan is. And I know that this is not I know it's a citizen speak and not, a Q&A, but I'm just, I'd be interested to know in future communications, how we're planning on speaking about this with our younger kids. And just as a parent, with elementary school kids, kids talk. So just wanted to comment there as a parent.
Very good. Thank you very much, Colleen, for your question. Do we have anyone else with a hand raised?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. So we will move on then to the chair's report. And the first item under chair's report is discussion and vote on the 2023-24 school year calendar. And we've received a copy of that calendar. But I'd like to refer this to briefly, if I could, to Dr. Carroll to share the outcome of the discussion yesterday and if that has any play on our approval today. So Dr. Carroll, can I ask you to share that?
Sure, thank you. Yes, yesterday, as we had decided as a committee about a month ago, we did have a conversation at the policy subcommittee meeting about the calendar in regards to how we designate specifically the holiday, which is currently listed as Indigenous Peoples Day, which had before 2022 been labeled as Columbus Day. And, obviously, as we discussed yesterday, school districts, label that holiday, those holidays differently on calendars. One thing that we looked at was research about surrounding districts in our area. Many of them, like Milton, have Indigenous Peoples Day listed. Some have Columbus Day, some have both, some have some other combination. So we were just trying to kind of explore that topic, which had really been raised and brought to our attention by a member of the community, Mr. Ron Cicchini. He joined us by invitation yesterday as a member of the community to share his perspectives, which really had raised concerns about the process through which the school committee made a decision in 2021 to switch from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, really with no discussion of that change. And so we had a really, I think, constructive dialogue it was cross-posted as a full school committee meeting. So thank you to those of you who were able to join as well. And we were also joined by Claire Galloway Jones, Director of DEI, and her perspective was very valuable as well. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. I think we all engaged in some really good civil discourse with, different perspectives perhaps. But it was positive, and there are a few kind of next steps we arrived at together that I can share. I think the main thing was we came to, like, all of us who were present in the meeting, which I think, was you, Chair Rosemarin, and Member Ross Denny, and Member Varghese and Member White, who are, along with myself, on the policy subcommittee. There, among those of us who were there, there was unanimous acknowledgement and recognition, more or less, of the fact that our process should have been more transparent and clearer. And we should have had the opportunity to actually discuss and consider a change like that. So I think that was an important step, that we kind of had that recognition together. We also talked about some different ways that we might go about continuing to be inclusive with our calendar and try to provide opportunities for students to learn about different cultures, including, as Mr. Cicchini had raised, the Italian American culture, and many other cultures. So Member Ross Denny had reminded us that Tucker has in the past had a really great multicultural night, sort of a fair actually, where students and families and educators are encouraged to kind of share elements of their culture with the community. And we all loved that idea of kind of making that a more widespread opportunity that perhaps could hopefully be available at all 4 of the elementary schools. That was one thing that we kind of came to agreement on. We also decided and committed to continuing the conversation about how we designate Indigenous Peoples Day / Columbus Day, on the Milton Public Schools calendar. I think what we basically arrived at, we didn't go into the meeting yesterday planning to take a vote on this topic, but rather to just open up the conversation. We committed to continue the conversation and to, as we are always able to do, we're here to approve the calendar tonight because we understand we need to, set the dates and things to allow for planning for next year. The calendar gets edited, as things change in the normal course of the year anyway. So I think we agreed that we want to continue this dialogue regarding how we discuss or name that holiday rather in October. And so a couple of ideas we have about that. Claire Galloway Jones offered to support us with planning a sort of a larger opportunity for learning and dialogue in the community, in particular to understand more kind of from a scholarly perspective, including Indigenous scholars. That perspective was not represented in our meeting yesterday, to sort of continue learning about Indigenous Peoples Day, about the history of Columbus Day, and kind of the relationship between those holidays. So that is something that we can continue planning and sort of figuring out how to include the community in that conversation and that opportunity to learn. And then, you know, alongside that effort to keep that conversation going, Mr. Cicchini asked, and, you know, I think we generally agreed that could be valuable to get community input on this as well. And so that's another thing that we're going to kind of look into, along with helping kind of people learn about these holidays. And, you know, this is, I think, a good example of how we're always learning, and, you know, we're always improving. And so I think for myself personally, you know, I do agree that, you know, this might have been a good conversation to have like a couple of years ago, but it's good to have it now. And I'm appreciative of Mr. Cicchini's, you know, really, I think yesterday, very thoughtful participation in the discussion. And I think that's you know, the way we always want to be in dialogue with our community and with each other. And so I thank all of you for participating in that and look forward to keeping the conversation going. So that's just my best attempt to try and like summarize what quite honestly was a very rich discussion. And I don't know if anyone else who was there would like to add anything that you think I missed.
Member Varghese?
I just wanted to add, Dr. Carroll, thank you so much for providing that opportunity yesterday to have that dialogue. I think it was really important for us to get input and learn, actually for me personally, to learn about both sides. And it was very informative. And I really appreciate the passion of community members to kind of, you know, bring things like this to our attention, because as you said, we are learning and we are improving, and we appreciate feedback. None of us are experts. We are trying to do the best, and we want to improve, and we need the community's input to try and improve. So we appreciate this, and we continue to want to have open discussions with the community to make that happen, because this is work that happens when we work together. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Varghese, and I share your feelings about this. I really want to thank you, Dr. Carroll, for facilitating that conversation yesterday. It was, as you say, a very rich conversation, and I appreciate you know, the direction that we're going with this, and I think we agreed that. While we need to take a vote on the calendar tonight to be able to allow the school district to move forward with the planning, that we make a commitment to having this continued dialogue and learning for all of us. And if it comes to making a decision one way or the other, that can happen later during the year. So thank you so much for doing that. And you know, I was remembering back to last year when we had Dr. Mona Abuzeda, who also came to the policy committee to talk about calendar issues. And that conversation also, I think it was very enriching, and I think it made our calendar better. And you know, I agree as Member Varghese says, that we're better when we're all working together. So thank you again for that. So if there are no further comments on that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft of the 2023-2024 school year calendar. Will you hear a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Osteni,
Yes.
Member White,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and Chair Rosemary, yes. So that is unanimous. Thank you.
Can I just make one comment?
Please.
This wouldn't have stopped me from voting yes just now, because I understand the need to keep moving forward, but I do notice that I had previously raised the point about early dismissal as a more positive frame instead of early release, and that wasn't updated. So if we could still consider updating that. That was the point that a teacher had raised to me, and I agreed that that was kind of a nice idea. So
Right, we did discuss that, and yeah, I think that would be fine if everyone else is okay with that friendly amendment. That sounds great. Okay. And also, we just need to look at a revised Milton School Committee calendar, which we updated, and I believe we've been in touch with you all. Let me just pull it up for 1 second. We needed to revise the dates a little bit for some of our meetings because one of the previously scheduled meetings was scheduled to be on the first night of Passover. And so we are making some small changes in the schedule. And I've checked with you all about your availability. And I think we had all 6 of us on one of the dates and maybe only 5 of us on one of the other dates. I don't remember exactly how that came out, but just to be sure that the public knows. So we have our meeting tonight. Our next meeting will be March 1st. The one after that will be March 22nd, then April 12th, and April 26th, and those leading up to town meeting. And of course, there are other ones in May, but the ones in this period between February and the end of April are the ones concerned. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility in doing that, being able to make those changes. And I don't know that we need to take a vote on that, but just want to be sure that the public is aware of this change in schedule. Let's see. Next on our agenda, we have policy subcommittee report. Dr. Carroll?
thank you. So tonight we have a first reading of the second batch of fiscal Section D policies from MASC with recommendations from Dr. Pavlicek. Dr. Pavlicek, are you able to walk the committee through the updates as you're suggesting, like you did yesterday, please?
Sure. There were 7 policies that we didn't get to in our first batch that we looked at a couple months ago. And these were not obvious ones we had to spend a little time looking at. The first one is one called Fiscal Management Goals, it's policy DA. And basically it is a reworking of the old version. There's one change of elimination of one bullet point in it, which is redundant given Mass General laws. So it actually is not a major change. It's just basically a rewording. So policy DA, I would recommend that you adopt. Policy DB, same thing. This is the annual budget policy. It's been reworded. There's a new section in the middle, but very little is changed in terms of the actual content. I would suggest you change in the last sentence school council to school site council, because that tends to be that's what we call it here. So with a minor change, I'd say that. DBD, which is budget planning, I would recommend a sort of a combination of our existing policy and the MASC version. MASC reworded a good part of it, but for instance, our current policy has some Milton specific language in it. For instance, the opening few sentences talks about Milton's public school deriving its income primarily from local property taxes and various things like that, which are specific to the town. So although that isn't in the MASC policy, I think we should keep it. They also had a couple of different bullet points in the middle. And again, in prior school committees added a couple Milton specific ones about, affording the ample opportunity to discuss financial impact of new programs and develop a multi-year plan, financial projections. Those are things that are not in the MASC one. They are in ours, and it makes sense to keep them. So we're suggesting approving the budget planning one with the Milton language kept into it. The budget adoption procedures is DBG is one we don't currently have. It doesn't say a lot that's new, but there's no harm in adopting it. It's slightly redundant. It talks a little more in depth about budget adoptions and the major categories from DESI and our ability to move things between them. So that's fine. DBJ, which is Budget Transfer Authority, is a new version of one of DBI, which is one we have currently on budget implementation and transfer. And in this case, I think our current policy is more appropriate than this one is. Again, more Milton specific, more in terms of dealing with what we do. So for DBJ, I would recommend that we in fact don't adopt the MSC one and keep our own. Similarly, their policy DD, which is grants, proposals, and special projects, we have a policy already called grants or gifts from private sources. Again, it's more specific, more specific to Milton. And again, I would recommend that we keep the one we have and not replace it with the MSC one. And finally, the purchasing one, DJA, again, it's not a policy we currently have in the book. It's somewhat redundant to our procurement requirements policy that we adopted last time. But again, certainly no harm in adopting it. So I would recommend adopting that. So, I mean, that's what we're looking at for in terms of the 7 remaining policies in fiscal. What we can do for our next meeting is actually give you basically a new redlined version showing for the ones in the that we're combining some of our current language with some of the MASC language, a version that puts those together. The ones that we're not adopting or we're adopting as is, we don't really need that. But for those couple that are sort of amalgamations, we try to put those together into a more readable format, sort of a track changes version so you can see what they look like.
Thank you, Dr. Pavlicek. That sounds great. So we can have that updated packet for the second reading. Assuming we approve the first reading now, I'll make a motion and then we can open it up if anyone has questions or comments on these. So I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of with recommendations as outlined by Dr. Pavlicek of policy DA, DB, DBD, DBG, and DJA.
I'll second.
Actually, procedurally, you don't need to vote a first reading.
Yeah.
You vote the second.
Okay.
So
We don't. Oh, okay. I never remember that. Well, does anyone have any questions? So the policy subcommittee did not bring forward DBJ or DD, so disregard those. It's the other ones that we have here, the recommendation to either adopt as is or adopt with the recommendations that were just summarized. Any questions or comments? Okay, great. So thanks again, Dr. Pavlicek, and we will be able to vote on approving the second reading of the kind of cleaned up versions of these next time. Thank you.
So I'll put that on the March 1st agenda then for the vote for the second reading. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Carroll. Moving on to Finance Subcommittee. Member White.
Okay. So finance met yesterday and there were a major discussion was with Martha Sandoval, who's the director of our community schools. She is looking to make some changes in the way the programming for the after school program goes. She currently has, in your packet, you saw that she is making a proposal about vendors, and she's going to bring those vendors and those classes that the vendors are running. Right now, they're being run independently, and a parent or guardian would be paying for that separately. She's going to bring that under her domain or under her umbrella. And she wants to do a pilot program for this coming year and probably the year after to see how it goes. And she's reporting that the cost to do that is going to be around $200,000 to $230,000, but she's able to absorb most of that expense because she's got some funds available from her revolving fund. And so what she's proposing is a 3% increase in the tuition or fees for the community schools programming for fiscal year 24. She did not have any raise, any fee hikes last year. So this is her first one. And she's hoping to sort of not make the increase in the fees, large. So that's why she's proposing a 3% now, with her absorbing some of the majority of the cost of this new proposal and this new way of doing things with her own funds. Part of this has to do with the fact that they're having some difficulty attracting staff to, and they have had some openings in their programming. So she's hoping that this way of doing things will let her hire some of these staffs for some of the popular courses that she offers, and maybe have them stay with a contract and stay within our employment for a number of years out. So that's one of the reasons she's making this proposal. Anyone have any other comments or questions about that? All right. So I'm just going to go to the motion. Hold on one second.
Second, Member White, I see Dr. Carroll's hand up.
Oh, Lizzie?
Sorry, I guess since it's not a direct question about the proposal, so this may be a little bit off scope, but I just wanted to sort of make a comment for the record, and Dr. McKinney, since you're here, to about the after school enrichment program, which my family absolutely relies upon and absolutely loves. I just wanted to sort of put up there, not knowing when or how we'll come back to discuss this particular topic, that I remember last year we did hear sort of feedback and confusion a little bit around the opportunity, the timing, and the process for families to be able to enroll in the program. And so can we just make an effort to maybe do a little more outreach this spring about making sure families know when and how the enrollment opens, because we heard from families that were caught off guard, missed the opportunity, got waitlisted, and so forth. So sorry if that was off topic, but just wanted to mention that on the record.
Yeah, she did report she does have a waiting list. So I do know that there's more of a demand than there is availability for the program. And I know, when my son was growing up and going to Glover, I relied on it as well. And I know a lot of families count on it. It's important. So So I would like to make a motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 24 community schools tuition. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call. Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
yes, okay. Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Chair Rose Marin,
Yes.
and myself. Thank you. The other thing that we spoke about at finance yesterday was the proposal from a summer theater program called Boxcar Stage. They were looking to use our high school auditorium for two specific summer programming this summer. One for college age students who are interested in doing a theater production, and also then another program for younger students, teens, to do another program. And they're starting this business, and they were hoping to use our facilities for free and pay for some custodial services. But after some discussion and some recommendations from Assistant Superintendent Pavlicek, we thought that it would be fair to ask them to pay a fee for the wear and tear that happens when the facilities get used. So we were proposing that they pay two different tuition payments, and the total would be about $1,500. So Dr. Pavlicek was going to go back to that group and make that proposal to them. Okay. And then I have two vendor warrants that I need approval on. Vendor warrant number 30, dated February 9th, in the amount of $213,061.56. And vendor warrant number 31, dated 2/16, in the amount of $505,731.12. Can I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. Can I do a roll call vote? Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Chair Rose Marin,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And then the other item in finance is to ask for a motion to allow the previously approved expenditure not to exceed $18,500 that we made for the school building committee. We made this proposal around the font bond project, and now we're looking to sort of ask to have that money shifted over to use for the expenditures related to the study of the Guile Road site. So, I had asked in our school building committee if we had expended any of that money already for the font bond project, and we had not. So we're asking for that money, for the school committee to vote for that money to be made available so that we could do design expenses and engineering for the Guile Road site. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I would just add that the school building committee did spend some money on font bond, some of that 18,000.
Oh, they did. Okay.
They did have some architectural engineering work done preliminarily, not a lot. But now that they've focused their sights more on the Guile Road site, they'd like the ability to use the remaining part of that money
remainder
to do architectural engineering site work for Guile Road.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that, Glenn. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that the school committee vote to allow up to $18,500 to be used for the engineering and site work on the Guile Road site. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, take a roll call vote. Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Rose Marin,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And that's it for finance tonight.
Member White, I'm just looking at the language of the motion, and I'm just wondering if what we just approved, whether we need to have a little friendly amendment here too, because the language of this was to be used for engineering and design expenses on Guile Road as well as for the Fontbonne Convent.
Okay.
And I just want to be sure that we're covering the expenses incurred for the Fontbonne project already and Guile Road with that motion. So if that is okay.
That's fine.
Again.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misread it, so. Okay, that's right. So should we do another vote, do you think?
Wouldn't hurt to just do another quick.
Okay, so let me read this as written. The motion is made to allow the previously approved expenditure of not to exceed 18,500 on behalf of the school building committee to be used for engineering and design expenses on Guile Road as well as for the Fontbonne Convent. May I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another roll call vote. Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Rose Marin,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, thank you for that clarification, Ada.
Sure. Thank you. We all set then with finance? Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. We have two different sets of minutes to approve tonight. Minutes from January 23rd and minutes from February 1st. So I'm going to just make a motion for them one at a time. Just find the, here we go. Make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2023 school committee meeting. Have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Do a roll call vote. Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member White,
Yes,
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and Chair Rose Marin, yes. And then also make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 1st, 2023 school committee meeting. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Do a roll call vote. Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member White,
yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and Chair Rose Marin, yes. Very good. Thank you all. Next on our agenda is next meeting agenda items, and I think we just talked about that we're going to have a second reading of the policies, the finance fiscal policies that we just discussed, and I believe we're also having a presentation by Director of Consolidated Facilities, Bill Ritchie, at our no, I've got that wrong.
Yeah, that's the
Pardon me.
next meeting.
That's March 22nd. Yep. So we have the special ed, special education presentation at that meeting.
Okay.
Is that right? Okay. Is there anything else that needs to go on that agenda that you'll know of? Okay. Very good. So now I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session to conduct a strategy session for negotiations, collective bargaining sessions, or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, not to return to open session. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Do a roll call vote. Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Varghese,
Yes.
Member Ross Denny,
Yes.
Member White,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
and Chair Rosemary, and yes, very good. So we will log off and get on to our other link for executive session. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye.